Okay, Jordan, welcome to Director's Notes.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Well, this is all, it's all come about really quickly because we partnered with Slick Films last year on their inaugural fund, and you were the winner.
Yeah, I didn't realise until like literally last week that I'm the first winner. I thought you've
Well,
been
it's
doing
the
it for a
first
couple of
ever
years.
fund, first winner.
Well, no one can ever beat that, can they?
No,
So
no, you've got that. So, how did you come to apply to the fund in the first place?
I'd always followed, Chris and Rachel's story and like how they just came out of nowhere and won Oscar. And I think like a lot of working class filmmakers, it inspires so many people. And then I was doing this lab in Bradford called the Forge Lab, and Chris were one of the speakers. So Chris came in. And I were like, buzzing because like I never met him before.
Hmm.
And then after the session, he's like, you need to apply for the Slick Film Fund, which I'd heard about loads of times.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, yeah, 100%, like I'll send it. I just thought it would just be nice, I thought it would just send it to everybody. And then yeah, I applied for it, and then it was like Champions League, like you get down to like last 32, last 16, and I thought, well, chuffing hell, I'm getting like pretty far in this. And then I got down to the last five, and then it were like I didn't even realize until today that audience votes. So I should probably read more, shouldn't I? I'd probably like look online more and check stuff out.
I don't know, maybe it was good going into it a bit blind because then you don't get too nervous, you don't really know what to expect. So maybe it worked in your advantage.
It's funny, because people seem to think I'm this like public speaking master, right? And I hate public speaking. But the one bit of advice I always give people is, and it don't work for everybody. I know it works for me saying it's don't prepare too much. Because like the first few times when people ask me to public speak, I used to get like dead nervous. Like people used to say that you never look nervous, but when I was on stage, I'd feel like breathless and stuff like that, and I'd feel like dead shaky. And I realized it was because I was prepping too much, and I was trying to remember everything I prepped. Whereas like I just started just like winging it, and then I just started enjoying it more. And like even like with this, like I thought, should I watch other interviews? And I thought, nah, just wing it. I mean, at some point it's gonna get me cancelled, but
No, but I think that's really good advice. And, obviously I was there at the fund and I think everyone in the room could tell like the authentic, honest place you were coming from. And that just came through from your personality, from what you were pitching, from everything. And I think that's, really what people bought into.
I think that's it. I think it's when I'm sat watching a pitch and I can hear someone shoehorning something in that's got no to do with context. It's just they're just trying to get that instant prep to that.
Yeah.
You kind of feel like it's almost like robotic. And I
Yeah.
just think like the one thing people always tell me I've got going for me is, I'm myself and I'm always authentic. So I just think if I don't prep, then that's the most authentic I can be. So just roll with it and what will happen will happen.
Great. Great advice. So tell us about Rocket Fuel then and the film that you pitched and has now been made.
It's been an absolute like game changer. I always said that the film I did a couple of years ago, Youthless, that was
Yeah.
like that changed my life. But I think this is even more so. And it's funny because it was for a different pitch. It was for a different fund. And I'd prepped in my head. Like I got this idea that I was going to do something that were a bit like, Scorsese's After Hours. And
Okay.
we're going to be like a cab driver in Bradford. And I've been percolating on it for ages, but then sometimes I can get bored of an idea if I think about it for too long. And I'd put off writing. Like I write every day, but I'd put off writing for that for like weeks. And then it was due next day. I think I had about like 4 hours to do it. And I was on my way to writing it. I was in an Uber, and I went past a field, and there were a burnt out car in the field. And I thought, oh, when I was a kid, like if I found a car like that was my summer. And then I thought, oh no, I want to write that now. But because I was buzzing to write that down, I thought, you know what? My best shot at this is to write that. So I wrote this draft in like 4 hours and sent it out. And I thought, I've kind of like done my sin dirty there because it's 4 hours and, it's not going to stand much of a chance. It's not that developed. And then it ended up winning like the Forge Fund Lab. Then it won Slick. And the
Yeah.
next thing I know, like BBC are on phone, and I was like, it was kind of annoying because sometimes you spend 6 months writing somewhere that just you end up like just thinking it's not going to happen. And then with this, it was just like it was catching like lightning in a bottle, I suppose.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think there was about it that suddenly everyone was buying into it, and also that you were able to write it so quickly?
I like the fact you've asked that question. So I worked it out last night,
Okay,
and
great.
it's when people come up to me about the script or about having seen the film, they don't talk to me about the film. They don't pick out scenes. They don't pick out lines or anything like that. When people talk to me about it, they talk to me about their childhood. So like they'll come up to me and they'll go, "Oh, I loved your film. When me and my mates were like younger, we once found this thing," and they start telling me like a story about their childhood. And I
Yeah,
think some of like best films you see is kind of like your own version of the film plays in your head when you're watching it. And I think everyone can relate to it because it's not just about estate kids. Like everyone has a childhood, do you know what I mean? And it's
yeah,
it's what you get up to. And I think Rocket feels just about that. It's just like paying tribute to that.
yeah. No, I mean, I felt the same way. I loved it, and it fills you with a real sense of nostalgia, and like fun. And I mean, Lenny, the wee girl, was my favorite. I was like,
Yeah.
she's just brilliant. Yeah, I think that's it. You've managed to tap into something really universal, and everyone can see themselves in it. So well done on that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
So, I mean, before we dig into the film, because there are some things I want to ask.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to know a bit about the development. So, you had your script ready, you won Slick, you won Forge Films. Then, how did you move on to the shoots and it be on BBC?
It happened really, really quickly. I think we got the BBC on board. I think that were like back end of last year.
Nice.
And then it were like, right, it's got to be done by, you know, just been finished. And it's like, it's May. And yeah, so first thing was I weren't ever going to just make like my first draft. As much as people were like, mate, like what more can you do to it? Like BBC have got no notes at all, which is unheard of. Go and shoot it. And I was like, nah, because I want to develop it as much as I could. And
Yeah.
I was conscious of the fact that if I did it too much, people might come back and go, you've kind of like ruined it or you've kind of like undone certain bits. But it was a rare one where every draft I did, everyone said it were even better. And that happened every round. And I was so lucky in that respect. But as well, like I don't stop there. I think a lot of people, the users, they develop a script and then, they start casting it and then they start practicing the script. And I think you kind of lose something there, especially when you're working with kids, because really what the workshop process should be is getting it on its feet and if you've cast someone, it's because they're almost an expert in that character. And especially little kids, like this is about 2 10-year-olds. Like obviously I was 10 once, but it were like 27 years ago. It's these kids can teach me more about kids today than what I can tell them. So it was about that. It was about having the confidence of dismantling it and letting it get messy. And it did get messy. Like the first couple of days, there were loads of fun, but there were also like all that tightness of the script had now been unraveled. But it's kind of like when you tidy in your bedroom, it's like it gets messier before it gets better, and that process started to click, and it was just so much like not just fun, but I learned so much from the kids. And you put it on screen, like if they came up to me and they're like, "I've got this idea," I'd put it on screen. I'd put it in there, and then we shared it with BBC. So like I treat it like we were doing a theatre. Like
Okay.
I thought, let's just treat it like we've got 5 days rehearsal,
Yeah.
or four, and then we're going to share it on the fifth day. And that's what we did. The kids did it live. They did it like without any interruption. They did it as if it were a play. I mean, these kids have never acted before, but the
Yeah, I
way they did
know.
it, I was just blown away. But that's because I've got so much confidence in them. Like they're just amazing.
Because you had a big open sort of call for casting, didn't you? And this bit, there's a line I pulled out because I loved it. So it was for Lenny. She had to have a gob like a foghorn Yorkshire accent.
Yeah.
I just thought that was brilliant. So like how many applications did you get?
Oh, we got hundreds, absolutely hundreds.
And then how hard was it to whittle those down?
It is, because some like a casting process can often, like as you know, be about people cast what they think is the best actor. Whereas it's also not just about that, but it's about the dynamics, and especially with kids, who's going to enjoy working with each other the most. And for me, like that was best thing it was. There were some amazing kids, and kids I've definitely worked with in the future. But do you know, like when Elif came in, like when I was casting Lenny, she literally kicked the door open, like she's full of beans, and door flies open, and she swaggers in, and she's like, "Who's Jordan?" And I'm thinking, I'm in trouble here. Like, what have I done? She's like, my sister, Mel Riley. I'm like, oh, Alex, I worked with a Mel like on a Useless. And I'm like, all right, I just thought the confidence of her. Like every kid was so well behaved and sat down and they'd done what the parents had told them to do, whereas
Yeah.
you just charged in and when it got to the rehearsal bit of the bit where she's shouting, where they imagine the other car, like they're pretending that they're on motorway, and this other car turns up and she goes
Yeah.
ballistic at it. I mean, there were like 50 other kids in the next room, and every kid that came in, I imagine they were quite conscious of that the other kids could hear them. Elif weren't bothered, man. She took it up to like 11. Like she was just like shouting and going crazy. And then I thought, she's deaf. For me, she was just the part. Like it weren't even acting. She just nailed it. And then we started pairing them up, and it just so happened that she got paired up with Logan. And
Okay.
Logan's like, he's already got the mullet, which was just like weird, because I was like, not only is he so good for character, he's got the mullet, and when he came in and they were together, I was just like, I just knew straight away. I thought, I feel bad here because I kind of know that this is the dynamic that I want. And then
Yeah.
loads of other kids came in and they were amazing, but it were more that I believed them two were best friends.
Yeah.
And when they both got the part, they both asked the same question straight away. Like when we called Elif were like, "Did Logan get it?" And Logan were like, "Did Elif get it?" And so you just knew, it was
Yeah.
so much fun. And then, yeah, we workshopped it, and then before we know it, we're on set. I can't believe we're on set last month.
I know.
That's how quick it's been, and now it's finished. It's nuts.
It is, but that's nice. I think, it's really nice to hear of productions where they've got that momentum, that energy, and everything's going. That sort of helps propel you through.
Yeah.
So when it came to the shoot, how was it? Because obviously working with children, you've got a lot more sort of restrictions in place. Were there any challenges around that side of it?
I think I've kind of got a bit desensitized to it because the last three films I've done have mainly been kid casts.
You know
But
you know what to do.
yeah, I suppose it is. The biggest one for me was the amount we had to get in the days that we had. And the first day were a bit of a killer because we'd done like a studio day where everything had gone dead well, and then we were on set, and we were on top of a moor, and it was like the weather were horrendous. Like we were all freezing, and it's supposed to be middle of summer. And I always joke that I'm dead lucky we because when I did Youthless, it's set in middle of summer, and we shot it the last 5 days of October, and the sun came out and it was scorching, and I'm just so lucky with stuff like that. So when we were doing this, I kind of like got humbled a bit because we were on top of this moor, and I'm absolutely freezing, and we had a couple of like issues where we'd fallen behind, and I was like thinking, oh no, my luck's run out. And then it gets to the point at the end of the day, like even though we got everything, and when you see it on screen, it's amazing. I end of the day, I was like, having a word with myself, like thinking, God, like we seriously need to I need a bit of luck because you could tell people were just. And then I just said to the producer, I went, don't wait, sun will be out tomorrow, and we'll be flying. And then if anything, it was too hot because then I started like burning up, and it was dead annoying and all because like I don't tan very well. I burn first, and as
You're
soon
a
as the
true
sun hits
Northern
me,
man.
yeah, I got like bright red on back of my neck, and every single I mean, we've got a crew of like 50, 60 people, and every single person came up to me at one point and went, "Back of your neck's dead red, Jordan. You want to get some sun spray on that?" I'm like, I
Thanks.
know. Stop telling me. But yeah, so when sun come out, everyone was buzzing. The vibes were about, and we were just like cooking me like gas. Then you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it looks perfectly summery and beautiful. I was just watching it again this morning. I was like, they nailed it.
Well, yeah, we didn't fake out the sun actually came out, so
Brilliant. I'd love to know about you and storytelling through through the eyes of children. Why that for you is something that you find, easy and the stories come out of you.
It's a good question. I think about it. It's a very deep question, actually.
It
Like
is.
I've never been asked that before.
Oh, right, because I was looking at your previous works and then you were
Yeah,
talking about it being with children. I just thought it's interesting that that's how you're skewing it.
it's getting like a therapy session now, isn't
Yeah, yeah,
it?
yeah.
I think it's because when I was a kid, I was very. You had to grow up fast. Like my first few like years, I lived on Dewsbury Moor Estate, which is like a great place to live, but also a rough place to live sometimes.
Mm,
Then I moved to Ravensthorpe, which is kind of like it's kind of like even worse, but also I
yeah.
had I had a great childhood. Do you know what I mean? So by the time I'm like 5, 6, 7, I remember my mates getting rid of their toys, because they all wanted to be rugby players and boxers and stuff like that. So we all grew up dead quickly, and we all like wanted to be like little adults, and we all. That's why my characters often behave like little adults.
Yeah.
But I think it's that. I think sometimes it's that you look back and you think you missed it a little bit because you grew up too quickly, but also because I saw myself as a little man from being like, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
I always saw childhood quite objectively, when people behaving childish and stuff. And I think it's definitely influenced like my work. And it's also the absurdity of it, like kids, like in Rocket Fuel, like Lenny just whipping out a candy stick and smoking it like a cigarette and stuff. That all that stuff happens in all my films, them sort of little things, and it's me laughing at myself a little bit. But
Yeah.
because as much as I thought I was a little man, people must have just found it funny that I was definitely still a kid, thinking that I were a little man. And that's and I also just find working with kids dead fun. I've got other stuff I'm doing like, very, very, round corner, but and it's about adults. And I have, my feature were about an adult and about a kid, but I am always drawn to it. I think like every like 2, 3 films, I'll always come back to a story about kids because they just fascinate me.
Yeah. And you're able to talk about so much, but also appealing to all different audiences, which I think is brilliant. And that's a real skill as well, to be able to put something out that you can see everyone would enjoy.
Yeah, someone said to me last night, they went, like after the screening, they said her favorite thing about the film is she's finally found a film. If it becomes a series that she could watch with her 2 young sons, because everything she wants to watch they don't want to watch, and the stuff that they want to watch in her thing. And she's like, with this, it's kind of like cross generational. And I think the reason for it is what I do is I write stories that are probably 15 certificates, but
Yeah.
knowing full well that kids will watch them. So I'm
Yeah.
conscious of that. I'm conscious of not putting content in there that's too far, but I don't really tame the way that the kids speak. And because like when the thing is like you hear people all the time complaining, oh, kids don't watch TV anymore. It's because of attention span. I'm like, yeah, it is, but also it's because there's loads of crap on telly as well. It's not just
Yeah.
because it's the attention span
They're
thing.
not
When I
entertained.
was a kid, I weren't watching stuff. Yeah, I wasn't watching stuff that were marketed at me. We were all watching South Park and like the films we watched. Like when you're a kid and you're watching like Terminator and Alien. They knew that kids would watch them films
Yeah.
because they sold the toys in Toys R Us,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though they're 18 certificate. What's happened is we've become dead conscious of it, and I think we've removed too much edge from kids programming. And I think like with Rocket Fuel and also Youthless, I know full well that kids are going to watch it,
Hmm.
but like you pretend that it's aimed at adults, but also it is aimed at adults because the adults will get things that the kids don't get, and
Yeah.
vice versa. And I think
Yeah.
it's that. So yeah, even though it's 15, and every now and then there's like the odd like naughty word. It's I'm very conscious. I don't want to put too much in there where kids are watching stuff they shouldn't be watching.
No, yeah, no, not at all. And yeah, I think that's really interesting and being able to do that. And it's nice to hear the feedback that someone said that because I could imagine that as well. So this was from last night, your cast and crew screening.
Yeah.
And was that the first time you'd watched it with an audience?
Yeah, yeah. The first time I
Yeah.
seen it on big screen, like we were sat in an editing suite on Friday,
Mm.
and then Monday, here we are. I would like to say that was the shortest turnaround, but I had a film I had to do for Bradford Youth Services a few months ago, and I finished it at 3 o'clock, and it were on at the cinema at 5 o'clock. So it was like I had to run down to the cinema and like hand up DCP. But yeah, with this, we had a screening last night, and most of the kids in the film are Bradford kids that's never acted before. So it's the first time they've ever seen themselves on the big screen, and that's why we wanted to do it before it went out on
Yeah.
BBC.
Yeah.
And it was just so amazing, just like so many kids were and the mums were so like emotional and stuff. And it's just such a good vibe. It's like for me, that's what filmmaking's about. It's not about like the awards and like stuff like that you get. It's about when everyone that's put so much into it gets together and they see it on screen. Because some of them might not make another film, they
I
might
know,
go
of
off and
course.
do other things. They'll always look back on that moment.
Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant. And also there's an energy there, isn't there, when you watch a film with an audience. And I imagine the energy with the kids was something like incredible.
It's really reassuring as well because for your first screening it's going to go well because it's all the people that made it. So like especially a comedy because if you don't land, you know about it, don't you? It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
silence. But yeah, everyone was just laughing their heads off and like cheering and stuff. And I thought, it's kind of like don't get carried away because when you when you show it to people that's not connected to it, it might be a different vibe. But I feel like people that saw it, they were blown away. And we invited enough people that had not they had naught to do with film, and they were all just blown away by it. So yeah, I'm just dead chuffed with it. I'm just dead proud of everyone's work.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. And like you said, this turnaround time is just unbelievable. And yeah, and that momentum and that excitement. So do you know what's coming next, dare I ask?
With Rocket Fuel, I'd
Yeah.
probably well, it goes on BBC, and then it's
On
a case
BBC
of
Thursday.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
Thursday. It's 10 to 10 on BBC Three, and yeah, it's one of them things. It's like right, and then we just see what the reaction is, and hopefully people will like it, share it, comment on it. But yeah, I'm confident. Like we've done everything we can. There's like
Yeah.
everything's out of our hands now. Because the aim obviously is to get a series. But
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like yeah, we've done everything we could, and I think it speaks for itself. The one thing that people always say when they watch it is there's no reference, like there's nothing like it. You can't say it's like this or it's like that. It's just like its own unique thing, and
Hmm.
it's not something that it's obviously set on a council estate, but it's not something that mocks council estates, and it's not something that it's all doom and gloom and like sad piano and desaturating like the imagery and stuff. It's about kids that don't know the working class. Because when I grew up, I didn't know I was working class till I left Dewsbury. I'm like, oh, I'm working class because
Yeah.
people treat me differently. And it's that when you're a kid, it don't matter. And what I find about a lot of stories about working class people is people are obsessed with this idea of like social realism, which is very
Yeah.
like external. And what we don't see is how people see the world around them, especially kids. We saw it a bit with like Billy Lion, we saw it a little bit with like Ratcatcher and stuff. But really, like when you're a kid, your point of view of the world is so different to what we've seen on screen previously. So it's about that. The show is literally about that. It's literally about why can't working class stories be cinematic in the sense that they pay tribute to like great movies and stuff like that. And for me, that's what it's about. It's not about it being a social realism. It starts as a social realism. You think it's a social realism at the start,
Yeah.
and then it's like it goes into a completely different world.
Yeah. No, but I think that's what I really enjoyed the first time I watched it. So it came through a couple of days ago. And I was like, okay. And when you see films, like you said, about the estates and about these kind of subjects, you're expecting a certain look from the color.
Yeah.
I'm expecting a certain tone. And this came in and it was bright and it was bold and it was unapologetic. And pouring special brew as petrol and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And I loved it. And like you said, yeah, it's refreshing as well because estates don't always need to be depicted as these horrible hellholes because people are just growing up and living their lives there.
I loved it. I loved growing up on an estate. For me, it's like a badge of honor. It's like
Yeah.
not something to be ashamed of. Growing up in a working class area, people know you've worked, you've lived. Like I was working from being like 10-year old. And like it definitely builds your character. And it's that I always laugh at at social realisms. They're always dead bleak, and quite often not made by people that are working class themselves.
No, no,
And
very
what
well
makes me
said.
laugh is someone sat in a colour grade and pulled that down. Someone sat and made it grayer and made that sky bleaker and made someone's actually gone in a garden and poured loads of crap all over, tipped a wheelie bin up. Like there's always a pram at middle of the road. Someone's done that to make, because they've got a point of view on an estate. And
Yeah.
like, where we shot it were lovely. In fact, person's house that we used, she was kicking off because we put some stuff in the garden. And she's like, "You're making it look untidy," and I'm like, "Exactly." It makes me laugh because so many films do that.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I know, and I'm laughing because it is so true. And you can just imagine someone being like, need to turn the bleak up to maximum there.
Yeah, make sure you got
Yeah.
some piano music. That's very
Yeah.
bad, very bleak.
Well, good. So we need more just real fun stories. Because at the end of the day, and I think, this goes back to what you were saying about how everyone was just reacting to the script. That's what people want to see. They want to see real life fun stories made well.
Yeah,
And, it doesn't have to be much more complicated than that.
it's refreshing. Danny Cunningham, who plays Glowhead Fred, right? He he said he goes, it's so like refreshing to play a story that he don't end up dying in story, or he don't end up getting himself into trouble with police or whatever. It's like, he gets to just be this character that the kids call Glowhead Fred when he ain't even a glowhead, but they call him Glowhead Fred because he wanders around the estate chatting to everybody. I mean, there's one on every estate, but people love him, and it's that thing that when you read the script, especially, you could look at this character and go, whoa, like this guy shouldn't be around these kids, but that's why I wanted Danny, because Danny's so warm and he's disarming straight away. Like he's just such a good lad. And it with that, especially with Sean as well, Sean Thomas, who plays Wes, it with that, even though she's bickering with the brother and they're shouting at each other at the start, I wanted someone that's so warm that you get that they're just a bit sick of each other, that there's no doom and gloom. She's not in any danger, and so often these films are, it's like, oh, you're on a estate, oh, watch out for this guy, watch out for that guy, which I just think's like it's a load of nonsense in it.
And then the problem is with that, that just then grows everybody's view. They're like, see, I knew it was like that because the films say so.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that's not what we need. We need some good fun stories.
Exactly. Like I think people's like references of like Northern life and estate life and working class life are from films that were made. Yeah, not even like even if you're working class and you're making, films about council estates and stuff, but you're looking for references and you go back to the 60s and stuff, most them films were made by like middle class to upper class directors. So when you think of realism, like the core of it, the start of it, were by people that couldn't like first hand relate to estate life.
Yeah.
And I think growing up, there were films that obviously blew me away, and I felt, especially like when I first saw Kes as a kid, to me, I was like, that's me. And I had a mate that was just like Billy Casper, he always had like a green jacket on, he was always out in woods and stuff like that. And I was like, bloody hell, and I felt like proper, I really connected with Kes. And then like as I got a bit older and I saw like This Is England were a massive one where you
Yeah.
felt like the authenticity. But also like when we talk about watching shows as a family, when my family we first sat down to watch the first couple of seasons of Shameless, before it went off in a different direction, them first couple of seasons, I thought they were amazing, and especially like when I first saw Lip Gallagher, I was
Mm.
like, this is a young lad that's aspirational, he's intelligent, but he's on a council estate, and it really like connected with me. But I don't think we see enough of it. I think it's always we were too sympathetic to working class life, and what we need to do is we need to represent from within, let working class filmmakers represent themselves, but also I've done it myself. When I did Suicide Kelly, which is a film I'm really proud of, first feature I ever did, we did it on budget of 10 grand, but also my references at that point was, we did it in 2017, but it's only just coming out, but I was watching like a lot of Mike Leigh, Ken Loach, even like John Cassavetes, Vittorio De Sica, and I was watching stuff like that, and I thought, right, so if you're doing working class characters, it's got to be really stripped back, really raw, almost documentary style, desaturated. I watched Naked by Mike Leigh about 50 times when I was doing it, and it came out, and you can see them seeds of the films that I'm making now in there. But also, I remember watching it back and going, as much as I love it, it doesn't have enough of my point of view, my sense of humor, my way that I see life to be like absurd. The fact that I mean, it has elements of them, and it is a very optimistic film at the end of it and stuff. But I wanted more of that. It was like that to me was me finding my style, and I've pushed it with every film. It's kind of like started with Youthless, and I was now thinking, right, let's shoot a film where the main character sort of like he thinks he's in a film to an extent. So the point of view on Youthless was let's shoot it like the main character thinks he's in a music video. So I worked with a videographer rather than a cinematographer, and we did it all in black and white, and it were all handheld. And then my next film, Dynamite Dealer, it's almost like a tongue-in-cheek, like bit of a piss take of 60s realism, but also celebrates it because I'm also a massive fan of it. But like they're all about like angry young men and stuff like that, and it's a film about a lad like that, but in today's world. And each film, I think it's become more colourful and even more my own style. But they'll always have those tributes to realism. But I think just don't get bogged down by it because there's enough Shea Meadows knockoffs knocking about, isn't there?
Right.
It's like you got to be yourself.
That's it. You've got to be yourself. And I think you've got to make what you know and what you feel most comfortable with. Because, as well, from the other point of view, and I say this to a lot of filmmakers, I was like, audiences know when you're bullshitting them.
Yeah,
When you're making something that you're not true to, or they can tell, audiences know. And at the same time, they know when something's made from the heart.
yeah.
So that I think, yeah, I talk to filmmakers about that all the time. I think that's really important.
It's cringe, isn't it? You know, when you see like, I mean, like I'm 38 in 2 months, and people would see it a mile off if all I did was just write what I think a kid's life is today and put that on screen. They'd see it a mile off.
Yeah.
Whereas, like people come to me, they're like, oh, like you dialogue's so authentic and stuff. But I always think, yeah, because I nick it off the kids that I'm working with, and I take all credit for it. You know?
No, but that's how it should be. Like, I was working on a music video recently and it was set in Italy and the director was using stuff from the kids' Instagram, like their stories and the way they wrote things and things,
Yeah.
obviously with their permission. She was like, because I don't know how a 13-year-old writes their Instagram now. But these kids do.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're your first-hand research. That's why you shouldn't. When it comes to kids, I think I see so many that they go to like, they go to a drama school and they're like, "Who's your best kid?" But I think if you're doing if you're casting an estate kid, that kid's probably not in drama school.
No.
So why should the person playing that kid?
Yeah.
Like it's if your character would never go to drama school, maybe a kid that's in drama school probably ain't the right person to play that character. Obviously, when you're casting adults and they've been through training, so that's completely different kettle of fish. But I think for me, I've always just gone and tried to find the kid, and I've done that on like not just youth. Suicide Kelly, we found a kid on Facebook,
Mm.
and he ended up getting longlisted for a Biffa for his performance, first ever thing he'd ever done, and he's now an actor. He's now and like you look at Youthless and what Austin Haynes has gone on to do. He's in bloody everything now, and like even like Owen, like he's in loads of stuff. Scarlett's an amazing young actress, and I think she's going to do so well. But every kid in that, like even the kids that played the kids in the background, like Yusuf and people like that, they've all gone on to have like great careers, and they're all. I put telly on, and these kids are way more successful than me, and I'm like, that alone thinking like does my head in that. But no, it's so it makes me so proud,
Yeah.
especially like I was watching Adolescence over there, and like
Oh, yeah.
Austin just turns up having a scene with Stephen Graham, and I'm like, amazing,
Well, there you go. See, pick the right people and then
yeah,
go with them.
and believe in them, like let
Yeah.
them know how good they are,
Oh,
like.
yeah, absolutely.
And that sort of, I remember like in my childhood, I maybe only had like maybe one or two teachers that said something positive because school was a different game back then. But you remember it today, and I
Mm.
just think, well, you might be that person that says something to a kid that makes them realize they've got the legs to go the distance. And I'm just seeing it all the time, and I think the best thing in the last 5 6 years is seeing how many of them kids have like blossomed and like created like good careers for themselves.
Nice. I love that. I'm going to end on that positive.
Yeah.